Hello and welcome to Meet Me in Tennessee. I'm your host, Allie, and this podcast is sponsored by the Northeast Tennessee Tourism Association. You can find us online at northeasttennessee.org and on all social media. And today we have the absolute pleasure to be here with Leslie Morgan and Chris Joyner with the USDA Forest Service. Leslie, can you tell our listeners a little bit about what you do with the Forest Service?
Okay, sure. So I'm the district ranger for the Unaka Ranger District. That covers 4 counties on the Cherokee National Forest. So I've got Cocke County, Greene County, Washington County, and Unicoi County. And then we have a sister district to the north of us called Watauga District, and that encompasses Carter County, Johnson County, and Sullivan County.
Awesome. Thank you for your service.
Thanks.
And Chris, would you mind to tell our listeners about yourself?
Sure. And do you want me to look at you or at the camera when I do this?
You can just look at me.
Okay.
Yep.
So sure, I'm the Public Affairs Officer for the Cherokee National Forest. We span the entire length of the state line for Tennessee. So we have 2 districts up here, and then we have 2 districts below where the park is. So I'm here because there's a lot of complexities into the issues that we'll be talking about today that maybe impact the other areas across the forest, and being able to speak to the entire forest rather than just specifically right here.
Sure. And I appreciate y'all both being here to have these conversations. And I guess just diving into it, what brings your passion to the Forest Service? Why do you do what you do?
You want to go first or me?
Oh, sure. I retired from the United States Army, and I have a servant's heart, if you will, and love serving the people of the United States. And I really love public lands. When I'm recreating, I'm on public lands. When I'm doing things with my kids and having creating memories, I'm out on public lands. And so it's a natural fit. This was the type of work I did in the Army, and I continue to do it now as a civilian employee.
Sure. I feel like sometimes public lands can be taken for granted.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm glad we're here to talk about this. And Leslie, what about you? Where did your passion begin?
Well, very similar to Chris in terms of servant to the people. You know, I feel like I'm a steward of all these great lands that we've been handed to manage and to steward. And it's their land. It's the public's land. Their tax dollars pay for me to manage those lands for them. And I'm originally from Townsend, Tennessee, right outside the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. My dad, my family owned a Davy Crockett riding stables there in Townsend for 37 years, and we were right out, like we shared a border with the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And my mom actually worked for the Park Service for a number of years before she retired, and that kind of got my foot in the door. I went and did a volunteer summer working in resource management, and I got to work with the great Kim Delosier, if anybody knows him. He was the lead wildlife biologist there on the Smokies for years, and
how cool.
Did a lot of work with black bears and elk and all those, and I was like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
So being kind of an outdoorsy girl growing up, always outside with horses, and my dad as a kid would take me on trail rides and teach me the plants and the animals and just, you know, how they're all interconnected. And it was just deep ingrained in my soul. And so when I saw an opportunity that I could do this for a living and get paid for it, it was just hard to believe. And I just stuck with it. This is my 30th year with the federal government.
So awesome. That's so much.
And
she has some amazing stories about bears. I've learned so much about bears from her. It's quite phenomenal, and it's really cool.
Yeah, well, I was a bear biologist earlier in my career, and the reason Big South Fork National River and Recreation Area up on the Tennessee Cumberland Plateau, Tennessee-Kentucky line up there. I was the lead biologist for a black bear reintroduction that we did up there in the late 90s, and now they've got a plethora of bear up there. I call them my grandchildren.
Yes, they're our neighbors.
Yeah, but we took them out of the Smoky Mountains. I tracked them. They had radio collars on them. I'd track them into their dens, and we'd immobilize them and take them up to Big South Fork and release them, and they did pretty well.
So you've been able just to grow this deep bond and connection with the land, being from here in Tennessee.
Yeah, it's really special to me. I moved around and moving off away. Like I went to the Mississippi Delta for a couple of years, and it's like the complete opposite of this, right? It's flat as that table, and but still beautiful in its own right, you know, and just such a different culture and a different social environment and a different landscape altogether, and the ecosystem's so different. And but I learned a lot while I was there, and it really made me appreciate the mountains when I got back.
And then you come home and you see those Blue Ridge beauties, and you just feel right at home. But like you said, public lands all over are special and unique in their own way.
Absolutely.
So today we're going to mostly focus on the Cherokee National Forest. Can you share with our listeners how much land is protected and managed within the National Forest?
655,000 acres with the Cherokee National Forest. Is almost 656,000. And it spans the entire length of the state line, with the exception of where the park is. Not all of it's contiguous, meaning that it's not all together like you would see. A lot of parks, I think a lot of folks maybe don't know the differences between the two. Parks tend to be more contiguous. Forests are usually have a little more in holdings where there's private land in there, but we span that entire length.
Wow. And I read that's the largest tract of public land in Tennessee.
That is correct. Yeah. We are the largest tract of public land.
Yeah, we're actually acreage-wise, we're larger than the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and people don't realize that because, just like Chris is saying, you know, the park is like one big contiguous block of federal land, and it's in North Carolina and Tennessee, whereas we sandwich the Great Smoky Mountains. You know, we've got up here on the north end, we've got about 350,000 acres, and then down on the south end a little bit less, but yeah, it's, you know, and even though we're one forest, the two zones, the south zone and the north zone, are so different. They're different climates, really. South zone's a lot warmer. Like typically they'll be, you know, 5 to 10 degrees warmer than we are up here on the south or on the north zone.
And is that due to like elevation? Or?
I think it's just the climate, because they're further south, we're further north, and our mountains are a little bigger, we're a little higher, you know, up than they are down there on the south zone. And then another really big difference between the south zone and the north zone is there's really a little bit into 3 counties down there, whereas we've got 7 here. They're kind of big and round down there, and we're real long and linear up here. Like the ownership,
that's a great way to describe it,
of the property is very, very long and linear, and we have 7 counties that we deal with. So for me as a manager, and trying, one of the things I really work hard on doing as the district ranger for my district is making us as the Cherokee National Forest relevant to our local communities.
Yeah,
and what do we bring? What do we bring to the table for the local communities? And I've been here 9 years as the district ranger, and I really try hard to work with our, you know, like you guys, our county partnership organizations in all those 4 counties, our 911 organizations, our sheriff's departments, all those folks. I try to stay really, the mayors, you know, I have really good relationships with all 4 of the county mayors. And so I'm just trying to make sure they understand that we have things that we can bring to the table for your county.
Yeah.
And we want to contribute. We want to make, you know, the livelihood in the counties for your folks enjoyable, and it's their land.
Absolutely.
It's their land.
We know we're a big recreation draw as well, and economic draw. There's a lot of things that bring people to their public lands. We manage the habitat while the state manages the wildlife that are on it, but a lot of folks go there to hunt. A lot of folks go there to mountain bike, to hike, to do a number of recreation. I'm constantly surprised by learning about a new recreation activity, didn't even know was happening on the forest. We're we learn about those all the time. We're different
always evolving.
values that people have, and there's always a challenge for us to make sure our management for the forest is supportive of all those sometimes competing or sometimes not at all compatible uses.
I want to pause for just a moment. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I just want to share with our listeners a little bit about the types of trails within the National Forest. I read on the USDA website that there are 700 miles of trails, 7 whitewater rivers, 2 forest scenic byways, and of course the abundance of wildlife and night sky viewing opportunities. So like you said, there's just all these different activities. There's mountain biking, hiking, wildlife protected areas.
So you said one that folks maybe don't even think about with the night sky. And I've come across people on the forest with, incredible telescopes, tens of thousands of dollars in these telescopes. That's their thing they go and do on public lands. And I think a lot of times when people get laser focused on the one thing that they enjoy and think the decisions are very simple because they're only looking at that.
Sure.
We have to manage for multiple uses, sustain yield. And so we have all these different, sometimes competing uses that don't necessarily always go together.
Yeah, and that's one thing I kind of wanted to make a point of the differences between Great Smoky Mountains National Park and Cherokee National Forest is that Great Smoky Mountains National Park is a preservation, conservation, a very look, don't touch, hands off, come, leave things, as you saw it. And while we would love for that to be the case here as well, we want, to leave things as undisturbed as we can. But our management is very different than theirs because we are a multiple use agency. They're under the Department of Interior, again, where that's more of a preservation, conservation type mission. We, on the other hand, are under the Department of Agriculture because we grow and sell trees. That's our big mission. Now, a lot of forests in the southern region have way more timber production and selling than we do here. We are primarily a recreation-driven forest. Doesn't mean we don't sell timber. We do, because that's just another tool in our toolbox to be able to manage the land and keep a healthy forest. But by far, recreation is our driver. And so not only in recreation are we multiple use, but you can come to our offices and get a permit to cut a Christmas tree. You can come to our office and get a permit to collect river rock. You can come to our office to get rhododendron. You can come to our office to collect, just multiple things where you can't do that in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. That's not what they're about.
So that's kind of some of the differences between national park and national forest.
Right, we manage through conservation, they manage through preservation. We do preserve cultural resources.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And threatened and endangered plant and animal species.
Yeah.
The only place that threatened and endangered plants are protected are on federal property. And so we do preserve, those are 2 areas that we do manage for preservation, but most other areas we manage through conservation. For example, hunting. Hunting is a conservation tool.
So when we think about these different user groups, can you all talk a little bit about the different types of user groups that you see and how you kind of bring them to a unified use for the public?
Well, I've got a great story for that.
Yes, please.
So every user group, it doesn't matter if they're horseback riders, mountain bikers, paddlists, hunters, fishermen, they all have their own agenda, right? They all have, that's what Chris was kind of alluding to that earlier, but they all have their own agenda. And so because of what I was saying earlier, we're multi-use agency. We're here for everybody to use. And a lot of times those are competing interests. But if it were not for our volunteers and our partner organizations, there is no way that we would get the great amount of work done on the ground that we're getting done, that we're seeing on an annual basis. A great example of that is our trails program, our trails management and maintenance program. We have 2 organizations that solely maintain the Appalachian Trail for us, Carolina Mountain Club and Eastman Hiking and Canoe Club.
Those are both great.
They are both fabulous organizations.
Can't say
Very
enough good
organized. I can't say enough about them. They have members. They adopt sections of the Appalachian Trail, and we don't have to do anything. Occasionally, we'll provide some technical expertise to them for something, but and we don't have to worry about it. So I mean, that's like almost 170 miles of trail that we don't have to worry about.
Purely for their love of keeping these trails accessible for future generations.
And then we have another organization called ETA, East Tennessee Trails Association, that kind of wanted to model off what Eastman Hiking and Carolina Mountain Club were doing, and recognized the deficiencies we were having. The AT was being maintained wonderfully, but getting to the AT was another story, and sometimes those trails were in really bad shape, and so they took that on. And I'm just talking for the North Zone up here. These organizations I'm talking about work primarily on the 2 districts up here on the North Zone, but they have really stepped up. Marguerite Falls, if you ever get the opportunity to go check out Marguerite Falls in Greene County, they have done some phenomenal rock work there, just getting, steps put in to where there's not like all these weird rocks you're trying to climb over to get up to the trail, and like, it doesn't.
Right.
No, and it's technical work too, and it's hard work. But those guys have done just a phenomenal job, and we've got backcountry horsemen, 423 trail riders, just. I can't even think of them all right now, but we've got all these volunteer organizations, and sometimes, we've got mountain bike groups, and Sorba is a really good partner that we work with all the time. But anyway, we'll announce that we're going to do some trail work somewhere that we really want to focus on a particular trail, and all these folks will come together a lot of times. It doesn't matter if they ride a bike or a horse or hikers or whatever, they'll just come together in one group and put their agendas aside, and they all work together on this one trail.
I think that's profound.
And it's beautiful.
That is where I've seen successful trail work, is places that are like that. I've seen that in other places where groups of people can come together and work on a particular trail project, even if their uses are very fundamentally different.
And what's so great about that is that they become friends, and they set aside their differences about, because a lot of times mountain bikers and horseback riders, that's a conflicting interest there a lot of times, because, horses have a mind of their own, and somebody comes around quick on a bike on a curve, and it's like, you just don't know what's going to happen. But they'll talk about those things in just a very natural, organic setting, and they're working and they're doing things they like, and it's really helped us set aside a lot of differences and allow people to see things from different perspectives.
Yeah. So to think as volunteerism as this common denominator amongst the differing user groups.
Yeah.
I think that's just a profound way to lead forward.
Yeah.
Connecting these groups.
It really is.
And I would encourage any of your audience to get involved with volunteering.
Absolutely. And while we're talking about that, where are some resources they can find to get involved? And we'll talk a little more at the end of the episode as well.
Yeah, well, all of these groups have their Facebook pages and their websites and stuff like that. And, you can like, for instance, Carolina Mountain Club, you can Google them, Eastman Hiking Canoe Club. Now, I think Eastman Hiking, you have to have worked at Eastman to be a part of that group. I'm not sure about that, but East Tennessee Trails Association is another really good one. If you're into horses, Backcountry Horsemen. Backcountry Horsemen of East Tennessee is the chapter name up here. That's actually a country. It's all across the country, and they're actually a very organized, very powerful horse advocacy trail group for horse trails. And we work, we have agreements as an agency across the country. We have agreements in place with them to work with almost every chapter across the country.
Awesome.
When it comes to horse trails and maintenance and advocacy.
It's impossible to name the opportunities without forgetting somebody.
Right.
Trout Unlimited is a
Trout
great example.
Unlimited.
You don't think about land,
Right.
but they are absolutely.
Keeps, Appalachian
Yes,
cattle enthusiasts.
we
They're
have
a
an
great
agreement with them.
community.
Yep, we sure do have an agreement with them.
We also have a friends group.
Oh yeah.
And it's easy to forget because we've only recently got it stand up in the past few months, and so they can find that online. Friends of the Cherokee National Forest, and there's a lot of ways people can become involved. And government works best when people get involved with our decisions, get involved with the things that are happening with their government, but also get involved with volunteering and helping us manage their lands the way they want to manage.
As you all have pointed out, it takes a community. It takes getting to know the mayors from the state level for funding, and then getting your hands dirty as a volunteer, and then us all acting as stewards for when we have visitors come to these places that we grew up protecting.
Yeah, and that makes me think of another point. Is one thing that since the pandemic we've noticed is how many new outdoor enthusiasts there are. Like people that have never, been in the woods. They've never hiked. They've never paddled. They've never biked. And they just don't know land ethics and the leave no trace principles and those kinds of things. And so we've got a huge effort ahead of us in educating those folks and
We sure do.
and trying to steward their lands,
And
to
I
where
think-
they're
I
not
think that
for
takes
future
all of us.
generations. We don't
Sure.
want to love it to death. I mean,
Exactly.
and that can happen.
And as we're in the business of promoting it, we want to also promote the leave no trace ethics
Right.
and conservation practices. And I think having these types of different groups, tourism, the Forest Service is so crucial.
Yeah.
So we don't love it to death.
Right.
I think we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 300% increase in visitation in some areas.
That's huge.
And there's some areas in the south that just became completely inundated with people visiting when places were shut down and you couldn't go. So the natural thing is, hey, I'm going to go be out in nature. Well, everybody else had that same idea.
Yeah.
And so they all showed up. And that caused a great deal of strain. It has like a cascading effect of having that many new people.
Well, sure.
And like Leslie was saying, a lot of folks who maybe don't understand some of the things that have been put into place to preserve and conserve their public lands, and it creates some challenges for us.
Absolutely. I guess moving forward, how can we prepare for increased visitation? What does that look like? Is it a conversation? Is it getting the ball rolling? I mean, what does...
Well, it's multifaceted. I mean, it really is. It's something as simple as like when you pull up to Marguerite Falls parking lot and there's 150 cars in that parking lot, go somewhere else.
It's a great time to have a new discovery.
Yeah. I mean, that's where everybody wants to go. It's easy. It's accessible. It's a beautiful, phenomenal waterfall. But that's not what you're going there for that solitude and that peace. And if there's 500 people on that trail, you're not going to get that experience.
Right.
And we want you to have that experience. We want you to have that great experience of being outside in the solitude. All Trails is a really great app, but don't believe everything you see on it because it's a what do they call it? A user created. People could put any trail in there. And so it could be, it may or may not be a legal trail. A good example I have for that is Red Fork Falls, right down here, down the road. Everybody loves to go to that falls because it's an adventure and it is a beautiful waterfall, but that is not a legal trail. We do not maintain that trail.
I did not know that.
And so we've had a lot of fatalities there, a lot of really bad injuries. And when people go there, because it is such a dangerous it's a short hike, but it's really, really dangerous.
It's really steep, really
it's
slick.
Very steep and very slick. And we have looked at opportunities. We have gone in there and had professionals go in there and look at options to try to get a trail in there, but it's just in this gorge, and it's just, there's no good way of getting down there. So and it is on all trails. And, I've contacted them and asked them to take it down, and they were like, well, all we can do is really this is a very dangerous trail, because somebody else is going to put it back up. But,
Yeah.
But yeah, we try to encourage people to not go to that area, but it's just too tempting. But the thing that folks have to understand is when they do that, if they do take a user, we call them user-created trails because they're not an official trail that we maintain, and so they're putting. If they fall and break their ankle, then the rescue squad has to come in and get them, and they're putting other people at risk of going and getting, or God forbid somebody has a fatality down there. But it's just it all goes back to that responsible use and knowing what your own limitations are when you're out in the woods,
knowing your skill levels, and having the right equipment for whatever it is you're going to do out there. Having a plan, letting people know where you're going, when you're going to be back. Those are things that the public or the visitors have a responsibility to do. Absolutely. I think there's an importance of education. As we promote our public lands for outdoor recreation, we also have to have an element of the education of it's so important to know your skill level,
yes.
Whether it's biking or hiking, because this is a wild area.
Yeah. And we, so, and then for us as a federal land management agency, we have, a responsibility to keep the roads accessible, and of course we have standards that we maintain too. And like for example, the Cherokee Skyway, which is a big, scenic byway, that's a paved, a state highway actually. And so that's like what we call a level 5 road. It's, anybody could drive, anything can drive that. All the way down to a level 1, which is actually a closed road, and we don't even use it. But most of our roads are level 2, 3s, and 4s, and a 2 would be like a high clearance. You would need 4-wheel drive, a high clearance vehicle.
Are these ATV friendly areas?
So that's a really good point because, a lot of times we hear, there's nowhere to ride our side-by-sides on the...
Another user group.
Yeah, another user group. There's nowhere that we can... Nobody really rides those ATVs much anymore, but there are the single track, motocross.
Dual sport
is really popular. And the side-by-sides, of course, are super popular. And, those, you can ride those, as long as they're street legal, you can ride those on any open Forest Service road. Those are open to any motorized use, just as long as they're street legal. But I would just say that, we get, we get a lot of criticism for closing a lot of the roads. And Unaka Mountain was one of them this past fall. And granted, the timing was not great on that, but we had a contractor that, that funding had been awarded and contracted, and the contractor was ready to go to work, and we kind of got to take them when you can get them right now.
Sure, absolutely.
And and so and that was a huge undertaking. They replaced 100 culverts in there, and that road is going to be phenomenal.
Oh yeah, it is.
They are putting, I can't tell you how many millions of tons of gravel on it, and it's just going to be, it's going to be a great road. And the thing of it is that it's going to be now almost completely reconstructed, where it will be able to be maintained, at a higher level for a longer period of time now.
Sure.
And we will have to go in and do less maintenance on it because they're putting, larger culverts in, because we're getting water, these flooding events like we used to never have, and those culverts were just not designed to and the amount of traffic we see on that road now.
That's such a great point. By investing now, it's actually prolonging the life of the trail.
But it closed it down during a really popular
Really bad time. It was during the fall.
But
Yeah.
there's, it's hard to pick a time when people are not
Yeah.
wanting to be on the force. Again, it comes back to if you're only thinking about your particular user group or just one user group, it's easy to think, well, that's a terrible time. But
when is it a good time?
There is no good time.
Right.
It's going to impact somebody.
It's going to impact someone, and in that instance, we had the funding, had the contract, and had the time that we had to deliver on that. One thing that I definitely want to talk about, though, that Leslie brought up about the roads and the categorization of our level of maintenance. I think one of the areas that I hear the most complaints about are an expectation for a road condition on a road that we are not managing for that condition to be able to drive your Tesla down it. Where it's being managed for a high clearance vehicle at the 200-300 level on the road, and someone is expecting it to be where they can take a street sedan down.
And that may be coming back to that new user group who is now an outdoor recreationist.
Exactly.
You know.
And so the user groups are always changing. I used to say, joke that maybe one day we would be talking about hovercrafts, and I've seen things online that I think we're already there. And so this always evolving, and when we write our management plans, they're good for a set amount of time, and then we reevaluate those, and we're always looking at how people are using the forest and try to be responsive to that for the uses that we know people are using and that most likely will continue to use.
A great example of that's e-bikes.
Yeah.
That's happened
a
just
new
in
thing.
my career.
That is a new thing that has just happened, and we have, they've come out with some policies, recently, but we didn't know how to respond to that.
Yes.
As an agency, it was like, oh, this is
very timely. It happened so quick after the pandemic.
Yeah. So, and for us, I know this is going to be the question is, well, where can they ride e-bikes? It's a motorized vehicle, so.
Right, and then one wheels. Have you heard of the one
wheels?
wheels?
Yeah, I've seen
That's
those
on
too.
the rise
for
forest use.
Yeah.
So it's always evolving.
Yes.
And I think it's important to consider as we think of the investments for long-term future generation use and also the conservation aspect. I think it's important for visitors to understand the barriers and the challenges that go into protecting these large tracts of land. So how do you all, how difficult or what are some of the challenges you face in protecting the national forest and maybe in the future expanding it?
So we're mandated by a lot of laws. Like there's the Clean Water Act, Threatened Endangered Species Act, the National Environmental Policy Act. Those are all
National Forest Management Act.
National Forest Management Act. Those are all, laws that we're mandated to manage and abide by. So it's those are our drivers basically, and I can think, when you were saying that, I can think of a perfect example of that, which benefited all of our resources and all of our recreation. And that is, I know everybody's driven up to the Pinnacle Fire Tower on Briar Creek Road. I mean, pretty much everybody's done that. And if you notice about halfway up, there's this giant bridge looking thing there. And so that's we call them aquatic organism passages, AOPs for short. But they're much more than that. They're basically a huge, giant, bottomless culvert, and they're intended to simulate. They're so big that it doesn't impact the stream. Like the stream flows naturally, like it would, like if the thing wasn't even there. And so what that does is it allows aquatic bugs and all the fishes and all the aquatic species to travel normally, whereas before that was there, the bottomless culvert was there, it was just two regular 6-foot culverts. And it spilled off, it had a barrier. It was a barrier there. The fish couldn't get up to travel and migrate normally, neither could the bugs and all the things the fish eat. So they put that bottomless culvert in there. That now we'll never have to do any kind of maintenance on that ever again, because it's designed to carry a lot of traffic, heavy, even logging trucks. It's designed for logging trucks to cross it. It's that, heavy and stout. But with the velocity of water that we're seeing come down through the streams anymore, with these like torrential downpours that we seem to get anymore, it's not going to affect that bridge or that culvert.
So would it be
anymore.
safe to say that maybe mindful infrastructure is a way that we are
I would
currently
say
Yes.
that's the perfect way of saying
It is.
And it's really easy for somebody to see, okay, the federal government's out there ripping up a culvert and then placing this bottomless culvert in there and think it's a waste of money. But we also have a lot of guidelines and direction where we have to consider these aquatic organisms. usages.
And that creek is one of our priority watersheds, because all the water coming off these mountains
right.
eventually ends up in your faucet.
So there's a conservation component and a user impact component.
Yes.
Yeah, in the lands that we manage are one of the few places where we can manage for those specific things that ensure clean water for everyone to drink. And the impacts here have such a cascading effect for everybody that relies on the water that they're drinking through multiple states.
So that's crucial to the existence of these protected lands, is clean
Correct.
drinking water.
Yes.
So what I'm hearing from this conversation so far is we have volunteerism, we have mindful infrastructure, and these are some components in just a plethora of other reasons why we should protect our public lands.
Absolutely.
So as we're thinking about the challenges and the barriers, how is the advocacy process for funding and for the community getting involved, maybe from a perspective of increased visitation? And
So I can address that. So our funding, for the most part, it comes out of congressional appropriations, and they're done at levels far above us. There's some appropriations that come through multiple different mechanisms, and we are very far removed from that. And where we need people to get involved is to physically be out on the ground helping us with some of these projects, to become knowledgeable and be involved when we have something out for public comment. So as part of our National Environmental Policy Act, when we have a proposed action, we have to put it out and allow the public most of the time it's 3 distinct opportunities for comment, and that's one in scoping, one during the proposed plan, and then one in the proposed and then the draft plan. And so the public will have those opportunities to provide comment, and so we need people to be involved in those processes and to help us make informed decisions.
Sure.
And oftentimes people don't become involved in that until many years down the road, and then they're surprised about it.
Yeah.
And we have legal mandates of how we have to share that information, and we absolutely are going to follow those. And then for a person that wants to be involved, that is one of the best ways they can. Anybody can do that, and look up some of our proposed actions and be able to comment on it and provide perspective.
Sure. So engaging in public comment scenarios.
Engaging in our process.
And I would say, get involved with organizations like Trout Unlimited, some of our partnership organizations that we work a lot with them. Like we get grants working with them. The National Forest Foundation, those are all organizations that we work together with to get funding from different sources to work on specific projects. And then our new friends group too is another great, opportunity to contribute. Either just being on their board. They're looking for people to be on their board, and to work in that organization too. So But yeah, I mean, we're always looking out for, because, you know, we do get, we get through the omnibus bill, we get funded through Congress, but we got a lot of stuff we want to do out here, you know.
Well, yeah, sure.
And sometimes the funding we get, you know, doesn't cover all of that, or maybe we've just got an organization that you know, we've got a project that's been through the National Environmental Policy Act process and it's ready to go, but it just may be low on the priority list of all the things other things that we've got going. And so, you know, we'll work with partner groups with, you know, to get other funding opportunities out there too.
Yeah, our partner groups are so critical.
Oh my gosh,
for land acquisitions to trail improvement to trail work. All of those things are absolutely critical, and that's an excellent way to help with some of those financial components that you were asking about.
So just starting in your local community,
Absolutely.
advocating in a local outdoors group as a way to immediately get involved. And I know at a congressional level, there's a couple acts right now, the Explore Act and the Great American Recreation Act.
Great American Outdoors Act.
The Great American Outdoors Act, yes.
Yeah. We did get some funding out of that, and we've got several projects in queue.
We have a lot of projects in the South.
Is it helpful to advocate at that level? Can the Forest Service...
we can't encourage someone or direct someone to contact their congressman or anything like that. So if somebody is interested in the financial piece of how we do things, the not-for-profit groups, our partners, are an excellent way to get involved with helping in that aspect.
Helping to build and preserve these trails.
Absolutely. And like I said, with acquisitions, those are rare, but we absolutely do grow the forest. It usually is in smaller parcels, but those are willing landowners that are that for various mechanisms are placing that land into the public domain.
Okay.
And usually those are done through nonprofit partners.
That's interesting. That's helpful. Thank you all again for having this conversation. It's a good one.
We could talk about this all night.
Yeah.
These are things that we're really passionate about, and it's sometimes it's easy, and maybe we skip a step or something in explaining something because we're always involved in the intricacies and the small components of it. But we got to remember that there's the big picture that impacts all forests. And one of our major goals at the Forest Service is not just trees. I mean, we are growing a crop. That's why we are under the U.S. Department of Agriculture. But in many areas, that crop holds enormous amount of water for the communities downstream, especially in the West. American West, a lot of those areas would not be snow-capped if they didn't have all of it held into public domain. In National Forest, they would be high-rises or cities there. And so water infrastructure is our water drinking, the future health of our water systems begins a lot of times in the National Forest.
I've never thought about that as the USDA with it being a crop grown.
Yeah,
that kind of reframes my perspective.
And a lot of folks, I think, they think of us more like the Park Service.
Yeah.
And that makes it challenging for us when we use a conservation tool, logging, to accomplish a conservation goal, which would be maybe thinning in an area where we want to get opportunity for more successional growth. Give little trees a chance to grow up. Yeah. And so we may want to log it, and then folks, I'll hear people, they'll call me and upset about it because they're approaching it like a park where the management objectives are very different.
We're a working forest. We are a working forest.
A vital source of life.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that kind of goes back to, like, as a working forest, you think about a working farm. So, you know, when you're working a farm, when you do some kind of management action, it affects something else, shuts down something else you were going to do for a little bit or whatever. It's the same thing. We're a working forest, so maybe we've got a timber sale out in a unit. We have to close that road because they have equipment back there and they're working, and it's unsafe for people to be back in there. And then, and it takes a while. That sale takes a while to do that work. And then once they're finished and they have all the timber out of there, they'll rehab that road and we'll open it back up. But that takes time. Sure. And it impacts folks. And so we do get a lot of complaints about roads closed. And but again, we're a working forest, and
Sure.
and there can be closed because of resource damage. Maybe we got a big flood and it's washed a culvert out, and so you can't even get back there anymore. So we have to close the road. Or maybe we got a prescribed burn going on back there, and we need to use that road as an access road to get to the burn or a wildfire, or it could be a whole litany of reasons. We don't just randomly close them because I decided I wanted it closed.
Sure.
I don't have the authority to do that. It's just.
One of the things I really love about working for the Forest Service is that people have very special connections to specific locations, and that's why we receive very passionate responses when we have to do access interruption for various reasons. And we take that very seriously when we do any access interruption, because we know that place may be where their grandfather took them the first time they ever shot a gun
Sure.
at a squirrel or something.
I think of Clark's Creek, growing up there camping,
Exactly.
and then the over-visitation. When I found out I couldn't camp there, at first I was like, oh no, but then I'm like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Because I saw the trash.
Yeah.
It was
Well,
necessary.
and it was really a bear issue.
Oh,
It was a bear issue because there's the wilderness area is right there, and so that's a bear sanctuary. So there's a large density of bears there, and so we were afraid somebody was going to get hurt.
Sure.
But like you said, that one specific area means so much, and I think all of us most people I know who work at the Forest Service have those special places that they care about as well. And so we get it. We understand why people have those really strong, passionate opinions, but we also have responsibility for the things that have to take place in the forest.
Yeah.
For the longevity to protect the public lands.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's crucial.
And we certainly could do better at informing the public about what those things are. And as a public affairs officer, it is my role to make sure that the public's hearing those areas that we have projects going on, and that's an opportunity for me to improve on. And I take it seriously whenever we get, I didn't know, a comment like that. Well, I didn't know you were going to do that. And so we have some work to do there, but we absolutely can appreciate why folks have such a passionate opinion.
Sure. Well, we all have work to do, and especially as we see that increased visitation, it's we're kind of trailblazing the way forward.
That's right.
As the stewards. And I wanted to talk about a couple different things. I'll kind of let you all steer the direction, but I'm interested to hear your black bear stories.
She's got a lot of them.
So I'd love to
She
jump
knows a
into the
lot.
wildlife component. I also just kind of wanted to touch back on the multi-use trails and the importance of designating and adhering to those designations. I think that's something we didn't touch on too much, meaning if you're a hiker, staying on a footpath trail, and if you're a biker, not going off the trail.
I'll take the first part of that. For the wildlife, we manage the habitat, and in most cases, there's a few exceptions, but on public lands, we're going to manage the habitat, not necessarily the wildlife. It gets into some very complicated, it's not at all, nothing we do is as simple as a black and white like that, but for the most part, we manage the habitat and not the wildlife species.
Okay.
And we work very closely with TWRA and other agencies in that, and having informed actions that are advised by TWRA, Tennessee Wildlife Resources, or other groups that have a responsibility, be it U.S. Fish and Wildlife in some cases. And we work collaboratively on decisions. A lot of things specifically with aquatics, there's a lot of cascading effects for a threatened and endangered species, for example, that have impacts on other species. And sometimes that will involve the Forest Service, but for the most part, we're managing the habitat and not the species, with some exceptions.
Sure, managing the habitat. What would that look like from like a conservation perspective?
So a great example is where we make a decision that through public engagement, through a public travel management decision-making process that a road has been closed, and that's a very lengthy process, and the road's been closed because of erosion problems.
Sure.
But that erosion might be impacting an aquatic species in a waterway that we have been advised through various collaborative efforts with other agencies that we're damaging this threatened and endangered species because of the erosion that's occurring here on this trail. And so all those things have a cascading effect that all some people see is that road was closed, but they don't understand that it was because of that other impacts that aren't easily identified because of the habitat management piece of it that we have.
And what a lot of folks don't understand is that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is a regulatory agency. So they enforce the Threatened and Endangered Species Act. So if we have a threatened or endangered species of fish or mussel or something in the waterway, and our lack of management or our management is affecting that threatened or endangered species, they can tell us what to do.
Okay.
They have the authority to do that because they are a regulatory.
They're looking for what they call regulatory certainty, and that they create regulations that will ensure that the particular animal or plant does not become in more peril. And so their regulations are to keep that species from getting in more danger and to improve the numbers. And that may impact us.
Can we talk about some of the types of wildlife and the types of native plant species within the Cherokee National Forest that are protected within those managed habitats?
So I do know there's some specific ones that we have a lot of interest in. At one point, most of the forest, specifically or across the whole forest, would have been American chestnut. And there's been an incredible effort to, there was an American chestnut blight that wiped it out. This was in the early 1900s, and there have been multiple efforts to try to raise a strain of American chestnut that can survive that blight that took out the American chestnut. And that's an ongoing effort. There are some advancements in it, but we still have a long ways to go with that.
Sure.
There's some other species that
Northern long-eared bat is another
northern
good one.
long-eared bat, and a lot of folks maybe are curious of what the long-eared bat has to do with the forest, but obviously that's where a lot of them live. We do have some caves, and we do have other habitat that they live in, certain types of trees like shagbark hickory, things like that are habitats for different species that are managed through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife and their regulatory certainty.
What about lightning bugs or fireflies? We have some special ones.
The blue ghost and the synchronized ones, yeah. Well,
it's like something from a fairy tale.
It's interesting you would bring that up because, Rocky Fork the state park does their lottery thing. And, gosh, I'm hesitant to say anything, but I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. We're working on doing something very similar in Greene County this year.
It's very exciting.
So we're still very much in the infancy stages of it, but working with the Greene County Partnership to develop a program. They're very similar to what Rocky Fork does.
It's very exciting. They have a good
It'd be a
structure.
lottery type program. We're a little scared too because we talked to them and wanted to know what their fatal flaws were, and he goes, well, we have 350 slots and we got 14,000 applicants on the first year.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Well, there's people in the country never seen
Yeah.
lightning bugs, and a lot of places in the American West don't have them.
I feel so grateful to have grown up
Yes.
here. I lived in New
Yeah.
Mexico for a stint, and that was what I missed, was barefoot in the grass, because we have grass.
Right, yeah.
And in the fireflies.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, Molly's probably going to kill me for saying that, but
Well, I will say Molly was on our previous episode, and she did mention.
Oh, she did?
Yes,
Okay,
yes. So
good.
you're in the clear. I don't want you to stress on that one.
Good. Yeah. So we're really excited about that because, as part of our management, we do what's called a bio blitz. Every year we go somewhere different on the forest, and it's a week-long bunch of science nerds and biologists that get together and they do all things. They basically inventory and monitor every living thing in a kind of a watershed area.
Sounds fun.
And so it's a lot of fun. And they do bats at night at 2 a.m, and they do fireflies, and we this year the bio blitz that we did, they just could not believe how many fireflies they were seeing, and so that was where they were like, and it was an easy place to get to there in Greene County, and they were like, we need to do this, and so we're gonna try it.
We have such a diverse range of things, like bats, caves, fireflies, lightning bugs. Just so much beautiful, not only scenery,
We're
but
very fortunate. I'll say for myself, I wake up every morning and I live in Greene County, and I live in an older house that kind of sits up on this hill, and it faces Viking Mountain, and just every morning I look out there and I'm like, I can't believe I live here, because it's just different. Every morning the mountains look different somehow. It's just it's a beautiful part of the country. Beautiful
it sure
part.
is. It always amazes me that we're like a temperate rainforest. Mm-hmm. I just find that so interesting.
Yeah.
Our own little rainforest, and we live right in it.
But when it dries out, you definitely know it.
Yeah.
Because it goes right into fire pretty
Sure
quick.
Yeah.
Those hot summers. And please correct me if I misspeak on this, but the mission of the USDA Forest Service is to sustain the health, diversity, and productivity of the nation's forests and grasslands to meet the needs of present and future generations.
That's it.
You got it right.
What has your experience been like serving under this mission?
Well, I think exactly as you said, that the future, current and future. And to me, that's so critical, because we don't want to just manage for down the road. We also, there's a sustained yield, multiple use sustained yield that has to happen now, but it also needs to be done in a sustainable way for the future. And to me, to know that I'm a part of something, I mean, there's been projects like the one that Leslie talked about that I've participated in that I know has had these other effects years down the road, and seeing those happen is pretty exciting. In fact, I got an email last week from a resource management plan that I was very instrumental on back in 2014, I believe is when it was, and some of the major parts of that were being implemented now, and knowing that I had a hand in that was pretty exciting, knowing that some of the things that I was intimately involved with and the public inputs that came in that informed certain decisions that we didn't even know about. That's why it's so critical for people to be involved in those public comments, because we absolutely do consider them. And
we don't think of everything. We need that input.
Right.
Yeah.
It's our land, all of us.
That's right.
Yes, absolutely.
And we try to sometimes utilize our platform. We'll get feedback that might be negative or this or that. And we try to encourage folks, go out to your city council meetings. You have a voice.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And believe me, we do listen. Sometimes, most of the time, I will say there's very complicated, hard to explain reasons that I will try to explain, but then it almost sounds like government doublespeak.
Yeah.
They're so complicated that it's very difficult to get to the heart of some of the issues that we deal with. Because the example I gave about the road having the soil erosion that impacts this one species that maybe is a food source for the one we're working about regulatory certainty. And that's a hard thread for a lot of folks to really believe and follow. And so it's a challenge. And I completely understand that. I'm interested in hearing what Leslie had to say about your question.
Yeah.
Say it to me again, because that was a minute ago.
Just what's it like? What's your experience been like serving under the mission with meeting the needs of present and future generations?
It's frustrating at times, but also very rewarding, on other times. I love our mission. I think it's perfect for our agency.
It really is.
And it gives us such, I think it gives us just such flexibility and adaptability to meet our mission. But yeah, from our district ranger perspective, it's hard sometimes. It's really it's hard for folks to understand why we do some of the things we do, or they just feel like we're the federal government, we're just going to do what we want to do anyway. But that's not the way of the Forest Service anymore. That it just isn't. It's just we really do need. I mean, this, as I keep saying, this is their land. It's their resource, and we're just here to steward it and manage it. But they've lived here their whole lives, and we want to conserve it enough to where it's still here for their grandchildren and great grandchildren, and they still have those experiences to share. I mean, you can love something to death. You look at the Smokies. That's happening. I'm watching it happen. It's one of the reasons they had to initiate that that parking pass. But it was just getting loved to death, and I certainly don't want to see that happen here. But I think we are so spread out that people can go to a lot of different places. But yeah, I mean, it's a dynamic tension is the word I would use for my experience, because you've got these tensions in different programs all the time, because we have a fire program, we have a timber program, we have fisheries biologists, we have archaeologists, we have hydrologists, we have recreation, and that includes wilderness areas, roadless areas, hiking trails, mountain bike trails, OHV trails. It's just, all those have dynamic tensions, and they all have to work together.
Sure.
But they have different agendas,
That's
so
a new perspective too for me, is just realizing that it's so much more than just outdoor recreation on public lands. It's almost like a multi-user group within the multi-user group.
Yeah.
Decisions that we make have to be informed by the cultural resources, and so a lot of times those are things that you don't even see, you can't even see a lot of times.
Sure.
When we'll do a cultural resource inventory and find that it has some type of very critical importance that maybe the general public would never even see, but it has things that are there that can't be disrupted or have to stop being disrupted. And that's one of the challenges, I think, and she talks about that dynamic tension, because there's certain things that can just stop something, and that's one of them. It's a great example.
You have to remember, it's called Cherokee National Forest.
Yeah.
Because this was all Cherokee land at certain, at
It's such an
point in
important
time.
part of history
Yes.
that we don't talk about very often.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
I read that the Forest Service is charged with managing natural resources in a way that best serves the multiple needs of a growing and changing nation. From a resource management point of view, and I think we've discussed this quite a bit, can you define what it means to care for the land and serve the people?
Another dynamic tension, right?
We'll lead right into it.
Yeah, we have talked about that quite a bit. And I don't want to.
I think I have
belabor it,
something to say to that. I mean,
Sure.
We understand that we are a recreation destination for a lot of people, and that recreation is a tourism driver, economic driver for a lot of these communities, and decisions we make impact lives and livelihoods, and we understand that, and we make our decisions with an informed nature that we know that those impacts are there and consider that as part of those. I don't know that we've touched on that. A great example of that is the decisions we make that impact hunting, for example. People come from all over the country to come here and hunting. And the hunting also impacts the local. The people that are coming maybe from Missouri are not bringing all of their groceries, and it impacts these local communities in a very positive way, but also may have some negative impacts. And those are all things that we're considering with our resource management planning.
Sure. Thank you for bringing that up. The conservation aspect of hunting, that's definitely a piece of it. And thank you for bringing up the name, the Cherokee National Forest. Those are both vital to this area that's so protected.
Another project, like he was talking, that made me think of this is the Horse Creek project in Greene County. And, that's been a vital local resource for folks for years. And back in the day, folks, we had I can't remember exactly, it was an older American program where we had up to 40 older Americans working there in that campground, and they kept it immaculate. I mean, it was just beautiful. They cleaned out every fire ring and sweeped off the trails, and all the trails around the campgrounds and stuff. And they'd bring their grandkids with them, and
Showing
work with
them,
and
acting as stewards.
Yes, yeah. And so when we went forward with the proposal to reconfigure that campground, it was a very visceral reaction from the public. They were angry because there's a man-made pool, sort of speak, thing there. There's an old dam there, and the pool itself has now been filled in with sediment from the years of sediment that's come down, and now the pool's filled in, and there's not a pool there anymore.
It was a swim beach.
It was a big little
I've swam there as a child.
Yeah, so you know where I'm talking about. And the dam is failing. The dam is, the wing walls on it are gone, and
It's undercut.
it's really undercut, and so the dam's not serving its purpose anymore. And so our proposal was to remove that dam, and upstream of that, there's a low water ford there also that goes over into the campground. Well, I've mentioned this a couple times with the amount of velocity that we're seeing on some of these rain events. We had multiple times where folks were stranded over on the campground side, and there's nowhere for them to go over there if it floods. It's just sheer mountain straight up, and so should there be an emergency, somebody has a heart attack or something like that, there's really no way of getting over there to them other than like some kind of swift water rescue type thing. But also because of those infrastructures that are in the stream, in Horse Creek, we're seeing a lot of the side of the bank is eroding really bad, and it's starting to braid and start flowing in unnatural paths and creating new paths. And so our proposal was to remove the dam and the low water ford and restore the stream to a more natural path and event. But it's also for the aquatics as well, because that is a really popular trout fishing stream. It's easily accessible. We would put one of the plans is to put some kind of accessible, handicap accessible fishing platform, there where folks could do that. And but it was a hard sell, because there was just this tremendous emotional connection to that area because of the, that local connection and that familial connection there. Sure. And we don't want to lose that. We still want to honor that and respect that. And my vision is I'd love to have like a kiosk there to where we've got those stories, and pictures of their grandfathers working there in the campground in the old swimming area, and
preserve some of that
history and honor that hard work that went in to make that place so beautiful. But it's also a safety perspective, because we certainly don't want anybody to get injured over there on the campground when it floods. And then the dam, there's private land right below that, and so we would rather take that out under a controlled situation when we control how that dam comes apart, rather than a flooding event taking it down and damaging people's property downstream from it.
Sure.
So there was a lot of components to that project, and ultimately, we would like to reconfigure that campground where the campground's actually on, the safer side of the creek, and then we could have the picnic area on the other side with a span walk bridge that goes over there to the picnic area. So that's another. We've got a natural. We've also got the cultural perspective there, heritage perspective, because of the CCC pavilion that's there.
It's like a
that's going to be
multicultural.
That is going to be completely redone. That's part of the Great American Outdoors Act funding we got, actually, and that's going to be happening really soon, because the contractors are finishing up a project on Watauga, and then they're going to be moving down there to Horse Creek and starting on that CCC pavilion. So, I really tried to listen to the folks and give them that opportunity. I met with several people down there multiple times, trying to explain to them that this is really a safety issue, and it's more about restoring the creek into a natural flow for the aquatic species that are in there, and still providing that recreational experience. It may be a little different than what has been there in the past, but it's still going to be there, and we want to honor that history and that culture that's there too. Yeah. So again, it's multifaceted, lots of dynamic tension.
Lots of users in there.
Yeah.
Like you said, honoring that history with a monument or something, but with the safety and the longevity of preserving the lands for public.
And that wouldn't have happened if somebody hadn't gotten involved and gave us the feedback.
Yeah.
That's what's so important about giving the feedback and providing public input, because there's things that the institutional knowledge with people just generationally being in the agency may not be aware of that history. I mean, there's a lot of CCC projects that in this area that meant a lot to very different people, and we'll hear about that a lot of times during our public comment periods for a project.
Sure, I appreciate y'all sharing that perspective. I'm learning so much. What advice would you each give, whoever wants to jump in first, to a visitor of the state who's new to recreating in our national forest?
Well, we touched on it a little bit earlier, I think, about just knowing your skill set, knowing your capabilities, making a plan, sharing it with somebody. Right. I would. Well, it depends on what user group they are, you know. I mean, there's just like, there's so many things they can do. But if it's just a hiker, there's so many organizations you can reach out to and get good advice. Our website it's an okay website.
I know you mentioned earlier maybe considering all the opportunities in the area. If one area is super packed with cars, maybe
Yeah.
checking out.
Great time to have a
location.
new discovery.
Yeah, yeah.
And that would be my suggestion is to first look at a map and do some planning on that. Let somebody know where you're going, but have like a secondary plan. Because we have a saying, once a good campground, always a good campground. Because a lot of places that are good campgrounds also have a lot of cultural resources there, we find. So if you found that spot, looking at a map, then other people probably found it. So have a second and third plan, and be ready to maybe this place looks a little too crowded. Maybe I'll go somewhere else and have a new adventure there. And you may find out there's a new place you like a lot.
Yeah, it's part of the journey.
That is.
I jokingly say a lot of times, like a lot of the new folks that are just experiencing the outdoors for the first time, I call it the Dollywood or the Disney effect. You know, you go to Dollywood and everything there's fake. Like it's all fake, but it's still fun, right? It's really fun, but everything there is fake and made up. It's not here. This is real life. This is real, like the animals you're going to see out there are the real thing. They're not, I have literally, now this is when I worked for the Park Service, but I literally have had visitors ask me, like in Cades Cove, what time do you let the animals out? That's how disconnected people are.
I'm sure.
And because it's the Disney effect. It's, you know, they just don't understand the reality of things. So you've got to take some responsibility when you come to a national forest or a national park, that you're in real life. You know, this is not Dollywood.
These places are wild.
Yeah.
And also, I would also encourage a new visitor to understand that there's multiple uses that you may encounter someone hunting.
Yeah.
It may be good to know what hunting seasons are going on at the same time. And they're perfectly
Legal
doing
to do that.
their way
Yeah.
of enjoying public lands. Perfectly legal, certainly a great way to enjoy public lands. And they need to understand that there's multiple uses, though, many different uses. And like I said, many of them surprise me even to this day.
They continue to evolve.
I saw a pit bull wearing this ugly Christmas sweater one time in the middle of the woods, and he had some kind of like competition. They were trying to do this hike from one spot to another, and it was like a group of people with pit bulls that had ugly Christmas sweaters. Top that one. I mean, because that's
That's
just like
what
what?
I mean. Yeah.
And that really happened. So people use public lands very many different ways.
Well, thank you all so much for sharing your experiences.
You're very welcome.
appreciate
Thanks
the
for the
invite.
invite. Yeah.
For sure. Are there any additional resources that you all could share, volunteer opportunities, or keeping up with the Forest Service and ways to get involved?
Yeah, I would say one of the ones that's emerging is the Friends of the Cherokee
Yeah.
National Forest. That's something that's really come on this past year. I think it's building on where it's going to go. It's a great place to start. There's so many not-for-profit 501c3 groups out there that they can reach out to, and they have very different aspects of them, and many of them are geared specifically to specific user groups. Some of them for seniors, and some of them for other different groups. And so, if you have a specific group you want to connect with, a group of people, there's probably a user group already out there that's doing things to try to make their public lands better, and be involved with those types of groups and help improve your public lands.
Leslie and Chris, thank you again for your service. We appreciate all y'all do for the community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah. And to our listeners, be sure to check out Leaders for a Litter-Free Tennessee on northeasttennessee.org for more information on what folks are doing around our region to protect the places we love. For upcoming events and happenings in Northeast Tennessee, be sure to follow us on all the socials and check out our website, where there is more up here to do, see, and be when you meet me in Tennessee. Thanks for tuning in.